Hello everyone, welcome to the first ever episode of The Gamer's Companion to Music. My name is Stefan, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite games of all time. Banjo Kazooie is one of Rare's signature games, and this landmark franchise helped to create the iconic sounds and themes that we all know and love from the Rare gaming repertoire. They weren't too bad at creating some memorable characters too. The variety of the jaunty melodies in the game contributes a lot to the overall feel and atmosphere of the world they've created for our heroes. My question though is, how is this all achieved? Let's take a deeper look into the musical world of Banjo Kazooie. The game itself was released in June of 1998 in the United States. Two sequels were released in 2000 and 2008, Banjo Tooie and Banjo 3. Banjo Nuts and Bolts, but that's another discussion. The game received IGN's Best Music Award for 1998 and rates 92 to 93% on sites like Game Rankings and Metacritic. For those unfamiliar with the game, the story revolves around a bear named Banjo and his backpack-ridden bird friend Kazooie. The evil witch Gruntilda has captured Banjo's little sister Tootie and plans to suck the looks out of her in order to make Gruntilda the most beautiful in all the land. Banjo and Kazooie set out to Gruntilda's lair and must traverse 9 puzzle-filled worlds in search of jigsaw pieces to open new worlds to reach Gruntilda at the top of the lair. The music was written by a British composer named Grant Kirkhope, a staff composer at Rare until recently. He is also known for his scores for GoldenEye 007, Perfect Dark, Viva Pinata, and Donkey Kong 64, just to name a few. There are over 100 music tracks in the game. Most of these are small cues for some less substantial events that occur, but each are memorable all the same. The soundtrack released on the composer's website includes 17 tracks, which include all of the main level themes from the game. He was also generous enough to release 22 beta files that did not make it into the game, or were early versions of the music we hear today. Both of these can be purchased from the composer for a price you name. Right from the moment you power on the game, you can hear that the game lives in its own world. Well, that sounds like a pretty generic and obvious statement, right? Well, if you play the game, you'd most likely agree that the world is unique, creative, and memorable. The same cannot be said for all games. The opening sequence tells you a lot about the design of the game. We have our protagonists and some supporting characters playing the theme song on instruments of their name. Banjo plays the banjo, Kazooie plays the kazoo, Tootie plays the flute, and Mumbo plays the... he plays the violin, he plays some sax, he plays some xylophone. Damn, Mumbo, why'd you have to break the trend? Just small things like the banjo starting off the melody when you enter Banjo's domain of Spiral Mountain is a nice touch. What I love the most about the score is the variety of thematic material. Each level seems to have its own character in terms of visual design, and the music complements the character of each level perfectly. In the deserts of Gobi's Valley, for example, you'll hear the Arabian-type tune that utilizes the harmonic minor scale. In Bubblegloop's Swamp, the swamp frogs actually start off the bass line until the rest of the synthesized orchestra picks up the tune. The steel drums of Treasure Trove Cove even make you feel like you're out on the beach. Must be nice right about now. Each track loops infinitely as long as you're in the level. In an interview with the Game Grumps on their Lone Guest Grumps episode, Kirkhope talked briefly about how he wanted the music to play off the tritone interval that splits the octave in half. This is because of the opposite nature of the two protagonists. Banjo is extremely positive and willing to do things, while Kazooie is very negative and different from Banjo in just about every way. So what notes are intervallically the farthest apart? Well, C and F sharp, of course, the interval of a tritone. Now, if you listen closely, you can definitely hear this idea pervade through many tracks in the game. I can't talk about all of them or I'd be here all day, but there are a few notable examples. Try out this theme from Mumbo's Mountain. The bass line starts off with the tritone intervals that complement the quirky melody throughout. What about this excerpt from Freezeezy Peak? You don't hear it here in the melody, but listen to the shift in harmony, moving from C major to F sharp major as the tonal center. Did you hear it? That's pretty neat, right? There are plenty more examples like this to find. Try out the theme to Clanker's Cavern, or the opening chords of Mad Monster Mansion. That's a good one. There's something really interesting about each of the main level themes. While they are all so melodically different, they're all in the same key! Well, for the most part. Looking at all of the level music, each one starts off in either C major or C minor. Now, I'm not saying that every song stays in the key of C. There are many chord changes present in each song, but here's the breakdown. Mumbo's Mountain starts off in C major, moves to F major, and then back to C major. Treasure Trove Cove is similar, but instead of moving to F major in the middle, it moves to F sharp major. There's that pesky tritone again. Clanker's Cavern is the first level to start in C minor, and takes a slightly different path back to C, moving up by a half step to D flat minor, and then to D major before making its way back. Bubblegloop Swamp stays in the key of C the whole time. It doesn't sound like it though, because the transitional material in between main themes in the song sequences and transitions throughout many keys before returning to C. This creates the illusion that we're somewhere new. Freezy Peak is the small outlier of the bunch. While it technically starts in C, most of the material exists in F sharp major, so I would say that that is the main key in the song. Gobi's Valley follows Mumbo's Mountain structure, while Mad Monster Mansion and Rusty Bucket Bay are very similar to Clanker's Cavern. Click Clock Wood is just like Bubblegloop Swamp in that it stays in the key of C just about the whole time. Normally, if you were to hear 9 themes repeated over and over, and each one of them were in the same key, wouldn't you find them immensely stale and boring by, let's say, about the third one? That is what is so impressive to me about this soundtrack. Due to the varied instrumentation and extremely unique character of every single melody, I would have never guessed prior to researching for this video that all of the songs were in the same key. I've also noticed a little trend with the tonal centers of the music. In themes that start in a major key, the tendency is to move to either F or F sharp. In the case of F, this is called a common tone modulation. Modulation, by the way, is just fancy talk for a key change. In the case of F sharp, it's called a direct modulation, as there are no common notes between the two chords. In themes that start in the minor key, we are always moving from C minor to D flat minor, which is also a direct modulation. These direct modulations are supposed to sound very abrupt. In most of the tracks, however, these modulations that occur are aurally shrouded in sped up harmonic motion and sequences that bring us into the new key. One of the really cool parts about the composer releasing those beta files is that we can hear some of where the original themes came from. The original theme from Treasure Trove Cove is much different than the version that ended up in the game. The Freezy Peak beta is my personal favorite, because we hear one of the melodies that ended up being in the final version of the level, starting about 50 seconds in. The Prickly Peak Island beta was originally written for Project Dream, and was an early idea for a snow level. More notably though, we hear what ended up becoming the sound for the Clockwork Kazooie egg in Banjo Tooie. It's always a lot of fun to discover more about the composer's process, and these files give a pretty neat insight into the origins of the music for this game. Another cool element of the sound design for this game, although a lot of people do find that it's very, very, very annoying, is the talking heads that give dialogue through the game. The characters, they're speaking straight up gibberish. But did you know, these sounds are taken from other music samples in the game. Mumbo's voice, for example, is taken from sample versions of what ended up being in the theme from Mayahem Temple, the chant-like thing that goes something like "Ino he no ha, Ino he no ha ni ha," or whatever the heck he's saying. The level was originally slated for Banjo Kazooie, but got pushed back to Tooie later on. Now, I have an interesting theory regarding the Gruntilda's Lair overworld music, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, especially those more familiar with the N64 computing itself. So one cool element in the lair and in the levels is the game's ability to crossfade different music tracks. For example, if you're in the lair, the regular Gruntilda's Lair theme plays. But if you go underwater, an aquatic version of the theme plays instead. There's a seamless transition between the two tracks called a crossfade, where one track fades out and the other fades in at the same time. This is also true for the areas directly leading to levels and around the jigsaw puzzles for the various worlds. Now, I've thought about how this is actually possible for a little bit. There are about 12 different iterations of the layer theme, give or take, but only 3 to 4 are possible within any given area. The note doors that separate the areas of the layer are coincidentally loading points as well. While the system can theoretically produce 100 tracks at the same time, the fact that the sound processor is shared with a graphics processor on the Nintendo 64 means that the higher the level of visuals, the fewer music tracks are able to be played. For this game, 16 channels were available to the composer. Because of the nature of these seamless transitions, I think that all the level music must be playing at the same time, but every other channel is muted until you trigger that part in the game mechanism. This seems to be fairly accurate to me based on an interview with the composer where he talks about how Banjo Tooie doubled the amount of channels usable from 16 to 32. This is what made Witchy World's design possible. There are at least 6 to 7 different areas, all with their own style of the theme. Could this have influenced the design of the layer and/or the level design? And if so, to what extent? Now it's just an idea, but let me know what you think. This is one of the ways that I am convinced that the music played a greater role in the design of the game than we all think. Banjo Kazooie's music is both memorable and interesting, and it's all in the same key. Almost. Tell me you don't already have some of these level themes that have been playing throughout this video stuck in your head. I know I do. Well, until next time, I'm Stefan, and you've been watching The Gamer's Companion to Music. Thanks for tuning in.